one day it clicked in my brain as I started doing these burnout events called Cleetus and Cars. I was like, man, if you think about it, it's just a little stadium. If it had a burnout pad in the middle, it'd be a little burnout stadium.
Garrett Mitchell, known to the world as Cleetus McFarland, spent nearly $1 million on an abandoned racetrack that almost ruined his entire life. To the internet, he is the mullet-wearing king of horsepower and freedom, constantly smiling while shredding tires. But behind the viral fame and the roaring engines lies a much darker reality that the cameras rarely capture. I turned off the comments on last night's video. I simply cannot allow people to spew untrue things about Parker. We are talking about financial collapse. A devastating accident that left the fan permanently scarred in a federal investigation that threatened to shut him down for good. What most people don't realize is that the American dream almost became his American nightmare. When the IRS came calling, it starts with a dream that quickly spiraled into a financial hallucinations. Lawrence Garrett Mitchell, a Nebraska native who grew up tinkering with engines, made the single biggest bet of his life in early 2020. He decided to purchase the Dodto Speedway in Bradenton, Florida. It was a rotting, abandoned oval track that had seen better days, overgrown with weeds and fading into history. He renamed it the Freedom Factory. What's going on, guys? Right now, we're out at the Freedom Factory, as you can see, and it is a beautiful but extremely foggy morning. Here, the price tag, a staggering $850,000. Basically, Mitchell saw this not just as a piece of asphalt, but as a content machine. He envisioned a private playground for his wild automotive stunts, a place where he could host massive events for his millions of subscribers. To make this happen, he didn't just sign a paper. He liquidated his life. He sold personal assets, drained his savings accounts, and maxed out every line of credit he could find. He was Allen. But here's the catch. Almost immediately after the ink dried on the contract, the world stopped. The global pandemic hit with the force of a freight train. Suddenly, the events he had planned to pay off this massive debt were illegal to host. The grandstands had to remain empty. The revenue streams he calculated on a napkin vanished overnight. The crazy part is the isolation. Crew members recall seeing Mitchell sleeping on the infield of the track, hammering nails and pulling weeds by himself during the day and editing videos late into the night. He was trying to save a sinking ship with a bucket. The bills, however, did not stop. Property taxes, insurance for a facility of that size, and payroll for his team continued to stack up. And that is putting it lightly. The financial pressure cooker was whistling. In a moment of raw vulnerability that he later shared with his audience, Mitchell admitted to bouncing a check to the IRS. And I just answer it and it's like, hey, this is yada 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 from the IRS. Holy cow. You're a check bounce for your quarterly tax payment. For those who don't know, bouncing a check to the federal government is not like missing a Netflix payment. It is a serious offense that can lead to seized assets or worse. He was staring down the barrel of foreclosure and potential bankruptcy. The man who preached freedom was trapped in a cage of debt. It gets worse. YouTube revenue, which was his lifeline, started to dry up. During the early months of the pandemic, advertisers pulled back their budgets. The algorithm shifted, favoring news and comfort content over high-octane burnout clips. He was working twice as hard for half the money. Friends described him during this time as a ghost. Gaunt, exhausted, and chain-smoking, second-guessing every single decision. The stress was eating him alive. What most people don't realize is how close the Freedom Factory came to being sold off for scrap. Mitchell was balancing on a razor's edge, robbing Peter to pay Paul just to keep the lights on at a track that nobody was allowed to visit. It was a heartbreaking, lonely grind, far removed from the cheering crowds he is used to today. But just when he thought the money was the only problem, tragedy struck the track in a way no one saw coming. The dark side of the burnout pit. November 21st, 2020. It was supposed to be the triumphant return. As restrictions eased, Mitchell organized the Cleetus and Cars event to signal the rebirth of the Freedom Factory. The hype was unreal. Thousands of fans were eager to smell burning rubber again. But in the middle of the celebration, disaster struck. It's not that simple, though. Racing events are dangerous. But what happened next was a freak mechanical failure with devastating consequences. A participant's car, a modified hot rod, suffered a catastrophic failure in the burnout pit. This is about Parker, who took an injury, our first ever serious injury at Cleetus and Cars after 4 years of running events. And that's what today's video is about. The radiator hose burst under extreme pressure. To understand why this is so bad, you have to look at the physics. A car's cooling system operates under high pressure and extreme heat, often exceeding 200 degrees Fahrenheit. When that system ruptures, the liquid turns into a scalding projectile instantly. This boiling coolant sprayed directly onto a bystander, 23-year-old Jacob E. Iyer. Iyer was a diehard fan who had driven all the way from Ohio just to be part of the culture. Instead of a good time, he was left with severe third-degree burns, covering 30% of his body. So here's the deal. The aftermath was brutal. Iyer required extensive skin grafts and months of agonizing rehabilitation. This wasn't a scraped knee. This was life-altering physical trauma. The incident triggered a massive lawsuit against Mitchell and his company. The allegations were heavy: negligence, inadequate safety barriers, and a failure to protect the spectators. The internet turned on Cleetus fast. Critics began branding him as a reckless showman who cared more about content than safety. They argued that the do-it-for the views mentality had finally gone too far. The lawsuit exploded on social media, creating a PR nightmare. Mitchell was racked with guilt. This wasn't just a business problem. It was a moral weight. In a tearful live stream, he stripped away the Cleetus persona and spoke as Garrett. He admitted that the incident haunted him. One split second mistake in a kid's life changes forever, he said. He quietly covered Ethier's medical bills out of pocket, separate from the legal proceedings, trying to make things right. But the damage to the community was done. Some fans defected, calling the event's death traps. The lawsuit forced a complete overhaul of the Freedom Factory safety protocols, costing even more money at a time when he had none to spare. New barriers, stricter inspections, and higher insurance premiums became the new normal. Yeah, about that. The stress of the lawsuit and the guilt of hurting a fan nearly broke him mentally. But while he was worrying about the safety of others, he forgot that he was putting himself in the line of fire every single time he strapped into a car. Then the danger turned directly toward him. The FAA investigation begins. Fast forward to February 2025. Mitchell had leveled up. He wasn't just a YouTuber anymore. He was competing in the Arc of Menard series, a legitimate stepping stone to NASCAR. He was at the legendary Daytona International Speedway, living out a childhood fantasy. But racing at Daytona is a different beast. The banking is steep, 31 degrees in the turns, and the speeds are relentless. During the race, chaos erupted. A multi-car pileup unfolded in front of him. There was nowhere to go. Mitchell's number 30 Ford was clipped, turning it sideways. The car caught air. At 180 miles per hour, the vehicle lifted off the ground and slammed nose first into the concrete retaining wall. The impact was violent. The sheer energy dissipation of a crash at that speed is equivalent to driving off a 10-story building. He emerged from the wreckage physically unscathed thanks to modern safety engineering. But the mental impact was profound. The car lost it in front of me and I saw it didn't have enough brakes to get slowed down before it, and I tried to go around it, misread it, zigged instead of zagged when I should have zagged, and I zigged and bam. In the post-race interviews, he joked, I was airborne longer than my first marriage, trying to keep the mood light. But privately, the crash shook him. It was a stark reminder that the laws of physics do not care how many subscribers you have. You feel invincible until the G-forces remind you you're not, he later confessed. And get this, it wasn't just cars. Mitchell had also developed a passion for aviation, buying a private airstrip he named Bald Eagle Airfield. But in April 2025, disaster struck again. A light aircraft attempting a Tachango landing at his airfield crashed on approach. Developing right now, the Manatee County Sheriff's Office is investigating a small plane crash at a private airstrip in Maka City. The pilot was injured and the operations were grounded immediately. Speculation ran wild on Reddit and Facebook. People were whispering that the crash was due to rushed renovations at the airfield, echoing the safety concerns from the Freedom Factory days. Was Mitchell cutting corners again? The Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, got involved. They launched a rigorous audit of his airfield and his fleet. This grounded his ability to fly and create aviation content for months. The investigation drained another $100,000 from his accounts and legal fees and compliance costs. Basically, within the span of a few months, Mitchell had crashed a race car on national television and had a plane crash on his property. The universe was sending a very loud message. The physical toll of the G-forces and the stress of the investigations were compounding. He was fighting a war on multiple fronts: land, air, and finance. The crazy part is, despite the wrecks and the audits, he had to keep smiling for the camera. But deep down, the anxiety was beginning to take a toll that no amount of horsepower could fix. Is it worth risking your life for a video? Redemption through service. It is easy to forget that Cleetus McFarland is a character. The man playing him, Garrett Mitchell, is human. The pressure to constantly one-up his last viral video created a toxic cycle. If he built a car with 1,000 horsepower, the next one had to have 2,000. If he did a burnout, the next one had to be on fire. In a 2024 podcast appearance, Mitchell finally let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates just like this.